Picture this scenario. You're at brunch with friends and someone suggests splitting the check evenly. Your stomach drops. You ordered the cheapest thing on the menu specifically to keep your portion under $30, but now you're looking at paying $65 for your share of everyone else's bottomless mimosas and avocado toast. You can't say anything because that would be awkward, so you smile and hand over your credit card while doing mental math about which bills you can push to next week. Meanwhile, the person who ordered 3 cocktails and an appetizer just got back from Miami and is showing everyone photos from their hotel room that definitely cost $400 a night. Here's the thing that's going to sound crazy until you really think about it. That person who just got back from Miami? They're probably more broke than you are. That hotel room is still being paid off. Those cocktails they just ordered are going on a credit card that's already carrying a balance. That designer bag sitting next to their plate cost more than their emergency fund, which doesn't exist. And the craziest part, they're doing all of this on purpose, not because they're reckless, but because they've fallen into a trap that's designed to be invisible. My name is Rob, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, human psychology, and why looking successful has become more important to people than actually being successful. If you've ever felt behind because everyone around you seems to be living a life you can't afford, or if you've ever wondered how people are funding lifestyles that seem impossible on their salary, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if you want to understand what's really going on behind the Instagram posts and the luxury cars. Now, before we dive into how this happens, let me ask you something. How many times this week have you checked someone's social media and felt a little twinge of anxiety about your own life? You see the vacation photos, the new car, the designer outfit, the fancy restaurant. And there's this little voice in your head that says you should be doing better. You're working hard, making decent money, doing the responsible thing. So why does everyone else seem to be winning at life while you're still driving your paid-off Honda and packing lunch 3 days a week? Here's what's actually happening, and this is the part that's going to change how you see everything. The people who look the most successful are often the most broke. Not sometimes, not occasionally, often. And the reason you can't tell is because being broke doesn't look like what you think it looks like anymore. Being broke used to mean not being able to afford things. Now it means buying things you can't afford and pretending you can. It's a completely different game, and the rules have changed so dramatically that most people don't even realize they're playing. Think about the last time you bought something because of how it would look to other people. Maybe it was that $180 shirt from Zara for a work event because your current clothes felt too cheap. Maybe it was picking up the dinner tab to seem generous even though you knew you'd be eating ramen for the next 3 days. Maybe it was that 4-day trip to Austin you stretched your budget for because everyone else was traveling and you didn't want to be the one staying home posting pictures of your apartment. That moment, right there, when you made a financial decision based on perception instead of reality, that's the trap. And once you're in it, it starts making decisions for you. You lease that BMW 330i, even though the $680 payment is going to stress you out for 3 years. You move to that 2-bedroom in the trendy part of town, even though it takes 40% of your take-home pay. You buy that $2,800 YSL tote, not because you love it, but because it's the kind of thing that successful people carry. And here's the really messed up part. Each of these decisions feels justified in the moment. You're not being frivolous. You're investing in your image, your career, your future. You tell yourself it's networking, it's professional development, it's presenting yourself properly. But what you're actually doing is choosing to look rich instead of being rich, and those are opposite choices. Let me show you exactly how this plays out in real numbers, because this is where it gets uncomfortable. Let's say you're making $75,000 a year. That's a good salary. You're doing well. After taxes, you're taking home about $4,700 per month. Now let's look at where that money goes if you're trying to maintain an impressive lifestyle. Rent in a nice area because you want to live somewhere that reflects your success. $2,200 per month. That's a little high for your income, but it's a good neighborhood and the apartment looks great on video calls. Car payment on that leased 330i because you want something reliable and professional looking. $680 per month. Insurance on that car, because nice cars cost more to insure, $195 per month. So far, you're at $3,075 and you haven't eaten yet. You haven't bought gas. You haven't paid your phone bill or utilities or Netflix or Spotify or that premium LinkedIn subscription you barely use. Let's add those in. Utilities, phone, internet, streaming services, that ClassPass membership you're going to start using soon. $430. Food, and let's be honest, you eat out more than you cook because you're busy and DoorDash feels normal now. $850. Gas. Car maintenance, that one parking ticket, $320. You're now at $4,675 per month and you have $25 left. $25. That's it. That's what you have for everything else. Clothes, drinks with friends, your friend's wedding in 2 months, emergency savings, retirement contributions, that weird noise your laptop is making. All of it has to come from $25 per month, which means it doesn't. You're putting clothes on that Amex. You're not contributing to retirement. Your emergency fund is whatever credit limit you have left. You're living right on the edge, one unexpected expense away from crisis, and you're doing it while looking like you have it all figured out. But here's the thing that makes this even worse. You look at your life and you think you're being reasonable. The apartment isn't that expensive for the area. The car payment is average for a lease. You're not buying crazy luxury items. You're just living a normal professional life, except the math doesn't work. The lifestyle you think is normal costs more than you make, but you can't see that because everyone around you is doing the same thing, so it feels normal. You're all collectively living beyond your means and calling it adulthood. Here's something that's going to blow your mind. Research from the Federal Reserve found that 40% of Americans couldn't cover a $400 emergency expense without borrowing money or selling something. $400. That's less than most car payments. And yet drive through any major city and you'll see $60,000 cars everywhere. The math doesn't math. Those cars aren't being driven by people who have $400 in savings. They're being driven by people who are one car repair away from a financial crisis, but they look successful while they're driving to that crisis. Now let's talk about what happens when you get a raise, because this is where the trap really locks in. You've been at your job for 3 years, you're good at what you do, and you get bumped up to $90,000. That's an extra $15,000 a year, about $900 more per month after taxes. You're excited. Finally, you think, you can start saving real money. You can build that emergency fund you keep reading about. You can start investing. But here's what actually happens, and there's a reason for this that nobody talks about. Your brain has something called a hedonic set point. Basically, it adapts to your current lifestyle and then demands upgrades to feel the same level of satisfaction. So that $900 raise doesn't feel like extra money. It feels like money you should have been making all along. And almost immediately, without even consciously deciding to do it, your expenses expand to absorb it. You move to a better apartment because your current place is feeling cramped and you can afford the upgrade now. That's $450 more per month. You trade in your leased 330i for a 340i because the lease was ending anyway, and you deserve something nicer after your promotion. That's $340 more per month. You start shopping at Whole Foods instead of Trader Joe's because you're making more money now and you should eat better. That's another $200. You take one more vacation this year. You upgrade to the premium Spotify family plan. You finally get that Equinox membership because you're going to get serious about fitness. 6 months after your raise, your expenses have climbed by $1,050 per month. You're making more money, but somehow you're even more broke than before because you upgraded your lifestyle before you stabilized your finances. You thought the raise was going to solve your money stress, but it didn't. It just gave you more expensive money stress. And you can't go backwards now because that would feel like failure. You can't move back to a cheaper apartment. You can't downgrade your car. You've locked yourself into a more expensive version of the same problem. This phenomenon is so common that researchers have a name for it, the hedonic treadmill. You keep running faster, making more money, but you never actually get ahead because your lifestyle expenses run faster too. Studies show that people who make $200,000 report the same level of financial stress as people who make $50,000. The stress doesn't go away as you make more money. It just gets more expensive. And the worst part is, you're probably doing this without even realizing it. You're not sitting down and deciding to live beyond your means. You're just making individual decisions that each seem reasonable, and collectively they're destroying your ability to ever get ahead. Let's talk about the psychology of why this happens, because understanding this is the only way to break the cycle. Your brain is wired to compare yourself to the people around you. It's an evolutionary thing. In small tribal groups, your relative status mattered for survival. If you were at the bottom of the social hierarchy, your life was objectively worse. So your brain developed this constant comparison mechanism that's always checking where you stand relative to everyone else. The problem is that mechanism evolved for groups of 50 to 150 people. Now you're exposed to thousands of people through social media, and you're comparing yourself to all of them. Worse, you're comparing yourself to their highlight reels. You're seeing the vacation, not the credit card bill. You're seeing the new car, not the 7-year payment plan. You're seeing the success, not the stress. Your brain doesn't know the difference between real success and performed success. It just knows that other people appear to have more than you, and that triggers the comparison anxiety. So you spend money to close that perceived gap. You buy things that signal success because your brain is trying to move you up the social hierarchy. Except you're not actually moving up. You're just going into debt to create the appearance of moving up. But the anxiety goes away temporarily when you make the purchase, so your brain learns that spending money on status items reduces stress, even though long-term it's creating way more stress. This is why you feel better after buying something expensive, even though rationally you know you can't afford it. Your brain is getting a hit of status-related relief. The problem is that relief is temporary and fake. You've treated the symptom, which is feeling behind, but you've made the disease worse, which is actually being behind. Here's where the story takes a dark turn. Because at some point, you run out of monthly income to absorb lifestyle inflation. Your paycheck is fully allocated. You're spending every dollar you make, but you're not done upgrading your lifestyle. You still see people with things you don't have. You still feel that comparison anxiety. So you start using credit cards, not for emergencies, but for lifestyle maintenance. And this is where it gets really interesting because the credit card companies know exactly what they're doing. The average credit card interest rate is 22.8%. At that rate, if you carry a $10,000 balance and only make minimum payments, you'll pay over $16,000 in interest over the life of that debt. You'll end up paying $26,000 for $10,000 worth of dinners, clothes, and trips you can barely remember. The credit card companies have calculated that you'll do this. They've optimized their entire business model around you choosing short-term status over long-term security. A dinner here, some clothes there, a weekend trip. Nothing crazy. All of it feels reasonable in the moment. But you're not paying off the full balance each month anymore. You're carrying a balance, and that balance is growing. You tell yourself you'll pay it off next month, but next month you add to it instead of paying it down. The balance creeps from $2,000 to $5,000 to $10,000. You're paying $190 a month in interest alone. That's $190 that's doing nothing but keeping you in debt. And here's the insane part. You're still posting on Instagram like everything is fine. You're still showing up to events looking successful. You're still maintaining the image, because admitting you're in debt feels like admitting failure, and admitting failure means losing status. And losing status is exactly what you've been spending all this money to avoid. So you double down. You keep spending to keep up appearances while the debt gets worse in the background. I know someone who had $28,000 in credit card debt across 5 cards and still bought a $3,200 Gucci bag because they were going to a wedding and didn't want to show up with their old Michael Kors that everyone had already seen on Instagram. They opened another credit card to get the 0% intro APR specifically to buy that bag. They're now paying interest on a handbag so that people at a wedding they'll never see again wouldn't think they were struggling. That's not a financial decision. That's a psychological crisis funded by Visa. Now, let me tell you what actual wealthy people are doing, because this is the part that's going to mess with your head. The people who have real money, the ones with investment portfolios and rental properties and actual financial security, they don't look rich. They look normal. Sometimes they look kind of boring. They drive older cars. They live in houses that are nice but not impressive. They wear clothes from normal stores. You wouldn't look at them and think they were wealthy. There's a famous study by Thomas Stanley that surveyed thousands of millionaires. The average millionaire drives a 4-year-old car. The most popular brand among millionaires isn't Mercedes or BMW. It's Toyota. The average millionaire lives in a house worth less than $350,000. These are people with 7-figure net worths who are driving Camrys and shopping at Costco. And when researchers asked them why, they all said basically the same thing. Every dollar I spend on looking wealthy is a dollar that can't compound and build actual wealth. They chose being rich over looking rich, and that choice made them actually rich. Meanwhile, the people who chose looking rich are still trying to look rich because they can't afford to be rich anymore. All their money is going to the performance. They're trapped in what I call the appearance tax, the massive ongoing cost of maintaining an image that prevents them from building the reality. Think about this. If you took that $680 car payment and instead invested it every month in a simple index fund, earning 8% annually, in 10 years you'd have about $125,000. In 20 years, over $400,000. In 30 years, over $1 million. $1 million from not having a car payment. But you can't do that because you're driving the car that requires the payment. You're trading $1 million in future wealth for the appearance of success today. And I'm not even counting the credit card interest, the expensive rent, the premium subscriptions, all the other ways you're choosing image over wealth. The wealthy people figured this out early. They lived below their means when they were young. They drove the paid-off Civic. They lived in the cheaper apartment. They looked broke while they were building wealth. And now they are wealthy and they still don't look it because they never cared about looking it. They care about being it. Meanwhile, you're over here trying to look wealthy, which is preventing you from ever actually being wealthy. You're playing the wrong game entirely. So how do you break this? How do you stop caring what people think and start caring about what you actually have? Because that's what this comes down to. You have to decide which you value more. The appearance of success or actual financial security. And I'm going to be honest with you, this decision requires you to do something uncomfortable. You have to admit that the lifestyle you're living isn't sustainable. You have to admit that you've been performing wealth you don't have. You have to be willing to look less successful than you are. This is where most people fail. They can't handle the social pressure. They can't handle the idea of their friends upgrading to nicer apartments while they stay put. They can't handle being the one who says, I can't afford that, when everyone else is pretending they can. They can't handle the perceived judgment, so they keep spending, they keep performing, they keep going into debt. And 5 years later, 10 years later, they're still broke, still stressed, still one emergency away from financial disaster. But hey, their Instagram looks great. The people who successfully break the cycle report something that sounds crazy until you experience it. They say that once they stopped trying to look successful, they actually started feeling successful. When you have $15,000 in the bank instead of $15,000 in credit card debt, when you're not doing mental math every time you buy groceries, when an unexpected $800 car repair is annoying but not devastating, that feels like wealth. That feels better than driving a leased BMW you can't afford. That feels better than living in an apartment that takes half your paycheck just so you can say you live in the right neighborhood. One person I know described it like this: I used to feel rich when I made a big purchase. Now I feel rich when I choose not to. That shift from feeling wealthy because of what you buy to feeling wealthy because of what you choose not to buy, that's when you've broken free. Because at that point, you're no longer spending money to manage anxiety. You're making decisions based on what actually serves your life, not what looks good to people who aren't even thinking about you. Let me paint you a picture of what your life could look like if you made different choices. Same $75,000 salary, but this time you live below your means instead of at your means. You get an apartment that costs $1,400 instead of $2,200. It's in a neighborhood that's perfectly safe but not trendy. It's smaller. The kitchen isn't as nice, but it's $800 less per month, and that $800 is about to change your life. You buy a reliable used Honda Accord for $15,000 cash instead of leasing the BMW. No payment, no interest. You cook most of your meals. You have the subscriptions you actually use, not the ones that make you feel cultured. Your expenses are $3,100 per month instead of $4,675. That gives you $1,600 a month to work with. You put $800 into an emergency fund until you have 6 months of expenses saved. That takes you about a year. Then you redirect that $800 into retirement accounts and investments. You put another $500 toward any debt you have. The last $300 is for life. Vacations you can actually afford, dinners out, concert tickets, whatever brings you joy. You're not depriving yourself. You're just not performing wealth you don't have. After 2 years, you have $18,000 in your emergency fund and you've paid off your credit cards completely. After 5 years, you have $115,000 in investments. After 10 years, you have $280,000. After 20 years, you're a millionaire. And the whole time, you looked completely normal. Not broke, just normal. You weren't posting vacation photos from Santorini. You weren't driving a luxury car. You were living a regular life while building extraordinary wealth. And now you have something that the people who spent all that money on appearances don't have. You have options. You have freedom. You have the ability to say no to things that don't serve you because you're not desperate for the next paycheck. The transformation that happens when you stop choosing appearance over reality isn't just about the money itself. It's about becoming the type of person who values substance over image. It's about developing the confidence that comes from knowing your life is actually as good as it looks, instead of the anxiety that comes from knowing it's not. It's about the quiet satisfaction of seeing your net worth grow while everyone around you is seeing their debt grow. Your friends might not understand why you're not upgrading your car or moving to a nicer place when you get your next raise. Your family might ask why you're being so cheap when you're making good money. But you'll know something they don't. You'll know that you're not being cheap. You're being strategic. You're playing a different game. You're choosing to be wealthy over looking wealthy. And 5 years from now, 10 years from now, when they're still stressed about money and still performing success they don't have, you'll be the one who's actually successful. Not because you inherited money or got lucky, but because you made a choice. The choice to value your future self more than you value the opinions of people who aren't even thinking about you.